Imposter syndrome says we're not authors.
But here's our books.
And here's our podcast. We are two book nerds talking about our indie author experiences
to spread the love of indie publishing and help other indies not feel alone.
Thanks for joining us, and now on to the show. Welcome back to another episode of Indie Book Nerds Podcast. We are your hosts, Jade Neoma
and Morgan Christensen. Today we are very excited to welcome today's guest, Alan Shivers.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me, Jade and Morgan.
Of course, it's wonderful to have you. Just to go over your brief author introduction. Alan Shivers is a slasher author who focuses on queer and mental health awareness in his trilogy Europa Halls and the Namaste Slasher.
And as for the Namaste Slasher, on a mindfulness retreat, 5 people from all over Europe who expect to heal from their trauma are instead hunted by a gruesome killer. Now, to give some brief content warnings, we do want to warn readers that you will experience blood, gore, violence, and death in this book. So if you are cautious of those things, maybe don't pick up this slasher novel.
Good call.
Well, Alan, would you like to tell us what your novel is about and when it released?
Yeah, so the first trilogy that you were talking about, Europa Halls, I got the books here well, Europa Halls, the first one was my debut about a year ago. I'll show you. Whoops, that's over here, this one. One was basically, oh wait, it's mirrored. Ooh, which way do we go? There we go. This is kind of my homage to 90s slashers because I was a massive fan of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, Urban Legends, etc. But then kind of set in a European setting because I'm from Brussels and from Belgium. And I thought it would be nice to kind of take away that element that is very often US centric, which I love, don't get me wrong, but I thought it would be nice to incorporate like my own background and European cultures into it. So that's the first one set in Brussels. The trilogy has, like you were saying before, Jade's a queer representation, mental health awareness. And then the Namaste Slasher was just released 2 weeks ago. That's this baby over here about
Awesome,
mindfulness.
congratulations.
Thank you. It was in a mindfulness retreat in the Croatian mountains, and something I'm very geekily proud of is that it was blurbed by Victor Miller, the writer of the original Friday the 13th. He read the book and then blurbed it, so that was definitely a nice little extra geek factor in there.
Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea. That's really cool. That's awesome.
Thanks.
That is sick. Well, I mean, you've already kind of mentioned that you geek out over like the horror stuff. What inspired your book?
Inspiration came from kind of a dichotomy of I meditate every day and I have been meditating for about 5 years, like 1 or 2 hours a day. And I was thinking that the moment in life that I feel safest or most grounded in life is when I'm meditating. That's when kind of, the anxieties of everyday life usually evaporates. I'm also a huge like horror fan. I thought, wouldn't it be fun if you like the moment that you feel safest in your life that you use that moment to introduce a slasher? The dichotomy of safety versus everything enveloping that safety isn't safe by any means. So it's kind of camp at the same time. I poke fun at the genre, I poke fun at myself because I am into mindfulness retreats and meditation. So there's definitely humor in there, but there's also depth when it comes to the mental health aspect as well.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I really want to read it. I know that as we were preparing for the podcast, I was doing my little bit of research into the books that you've written and kind of looking them up. And I know that one of the characters wears a Buddha mask, which we'll talk about more later. But I just remember thinking, like, this sounds like so much fun to go into this mindfulness retreat. And to me, it makes sense, like, why it's a part of the plot. Because if you have this mental health representation, it just gives you this perfect, like, contrast between this calming yourself and being and getting your mind right and focusing on healing, and then you've got like this really scary horror aspect. So I just love it. I really want to read it. But what I'm wondering is, what is your writing journey and what brought you to the writer that you are today?
So I studied literature at university. I did English and Spanish literature. My first language, you probably hear that I'm not a native, is Dutch or Flemish, whichever way you want to put it. So I studied English and Spanish at university in Belgium. Then I moved to the UK. I was always writing. We had to do poetry, screenwriting, those kind of things. But I never felt, how can I put it, like confident enough, I suppose, to actually publish or self-publish or traditionally whatever. And then I think two elements helped: a big big breakup with my ex, and then the pandemic. All of a sudden, I was like, "Hey, I've got time on my hands. How can I project that in a healthy way and do the things that I've always wanted to do?" And I thought I just started writing the first European halls for myself, selfishly, because I was thinking, "Oh, I really miss 90s like chase scenes in the 90s slasher films. There were so many good chase scenes that you don't find that much more not that much anymore nowadays. So I thought I'll just start writing it and see what people think, even if it's family or friends. And they're like, "I'll just try to publish it." And then a really good friend of mine from London is self-published and mafia genre, and she's like, "Yeah, you should self-publish. That way you're indie. You could, be your own boss and everything." And I thought, I'll just try. And yeah, the response was very positive, and I was very grateful that things kicked off quite quickly. So it just kind of organically developed from there. And so I've been self-published for a little bit over a year now and 4 books in, so it's going well, yeah, to the point where it's become like a job now. So that's something to be grateful of, right? So
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's not everybody gets to go to the indie world as easily. And for some people, they kind of fall into it, and I think that that's a sign that you were definitely always meant to write these books and to publish them. I know that you had mentioned to us that queer representation is very important to you. What was the link for you between queerness and horror, and how did you know that that was going to be a big piece of the story before you started writing?
actually didn't know it was going to be a big piece. It kind of came very organically. I'm gay myself, and with the debut, there was still kind of this thing, "Oh, will people be accepting of me?" Or you doubt yourself. You have the imposter syndrome. I think you can probably both relate to that feeling, I guess, right?
Yes.
And then there was a lesbian relationship in the first one, but then I got really good, positive, lovely feedback. So then I started doing more research because I was thinking, okay, I'm gay, but I'm still a majority within the minority. I'm still, put it bluntly, the white dude. So I wanted to make sure there was proper representation also of BIPOC and different elements within the queer umbrella. So I reached out to sensitivity readers who are aromantic, asexual, for example, and then in number two and number three, the main characters are ROAs. So it was really nice, like reaching out to people. I think I interviewed about 55 or 60 readers and different authors who are in part of that spectrum, or yeah, and I've learned a lot through them. So I think it grew organically, and I became more self-confident. And I was thinking, I want to use the voice and not just talk about me again, because there's so many gay male author voices. I mean, it's still minority, but like I said, I didn't want to just talk about gayness if there's so much else in the umbrella terminology. And then also the horror aspect, I think queer and horror have always gone hand in hand. Actually, that's what I studied at university, queerness in horror. If you think about Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, there was always like the lurking in the shadows, not being accepted by society. Vampires inherently being bisexual. If you think of turning someone into a vampire, didn't matter which gender, it was more of a, phallic act or sexual act. Um, so I think a lot of the times, Picture of Dorian Gray, to name another one, it's been queer for forever, or queer coded at least. Um, and I think the horror genre is also so accepting, which I love, not just with queerness, but people in general, people that have gone through trauma, or the lovely weirdness that we all have as authors. I'd like to think I felt very accepted within that community, and horror is just, it allows for everyone to just be themselves, which I love. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love all the different representation that you added. I think that is definitely a very important piece when you're trying to represent minority groups, is to make sure you're not, leaving anybody out, or focusing too hard on
Hmm.
one spot. It's really nice to know that you put in that research, especially with sensitivity readers. I know that that's not a thing that every author even knows about. I know that when I started writing, I had no idea what a sensitivity writer or reader was. I had no idea that, and I'm appreciative of it. I think it's an amazing thing. I just didn't know about it when I first got into writing. So it's amazing that you put in that work up front, and you really put, before you'd even publish. You were really going through all those readers, and trying to make sure that you were representing all these different minority groups respectfully. So I really do appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I hope that came across organically. And I've like so many times I was like the second, the fifth, the 20th draft I would send to the sensitivity readers and thinking, is this how you want to see yourself? Is it too stereotypical? So I learned so much even as a game man. You would think that you know if you're part of the community, but you don't know everything. You can always learn from others, I think. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had a sensitivity reader for my books, and she opened my eyes to things that I didn't even know about because obviously it didn't affect me. Um, like,
hmm
what's the thing for it? Oh, like white default. I did not realize that that was a thing to not even
hmm
describe a character's skin tone whatsoever. Our minds automatically think of a white person or a white character. So it's very
hmm
important to even just describe skin tone. Um, so
hmm
sensitivity readers are very important, and I'm very glad that she did that. It's super cool.
Yeah, very
Um,
appreciative of those people, exactly. And I think it's the same with the male gaze in general, that I have a lot of strong female characters in my slashers, and I didn't want to have this typical perspective where you go like, oh, they're just like bitchy girls who have sex and die. You know what happens a lot in the 80s slashers? It's very like
Yeah.
one-dimensional. I wanted them to be like
mhm,
women who are strong and are actually good friends and they're intellectual people. And basically, as a game man, the strongest network of people I've had around me who've always been there have been strong female women. That's why we also love our divas usually, because they're the ones who lift us up a lot of the times as gay men. So definitely wanted to represent that.
awesome.
Mhm.
Well, we kind of went over this a little bit. When people think of the horror genre, they often do not see it as a safe place.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us about how it is a safe place for you?
It was the only genre I could see myself in being authentic, as in, I'll be open with you, I've been in treatment for PTSD for a couple of years, and horror has always been the genre where I felt you have this kind of framework where you know how the tropes work. Once you know the genre a little bit, definitely the subgenre slasher, you have the three acts, the first girl, the final girl. So the fact that you can use a safe structure and a framework to kind of reach some sort of catharsis by the end of it and subvert those tropes is something that made me feel safe because it wasn't easy to talk about. I never said like Alan Shivers has PTSD in the novels, but one of the main characters in the follow-up in the sequel has PTSD, and it was really kind of freeing to talk about all those little daily struggles, and a lot of it is it's a very invisible disorder, so it's really nice, maybe not the best word, but freeing, I guess, to write about that and to talk about that. And I felt safe within the genre. And once I started writing and reaching out to other people, so many horror authors have gone through trauma, and I mean people in general. I'm not saying it's just horror. I can only speak from the genre that I'm familiar with, right?
Hmm.
But I've noticed that a lot of them, and a lot of the readers too, have gone through trauma or some sort of chronic PTSD or chronic illnesses, or so it just felt like a safe haven, I guess. I don't know because you feel unsafe, but in a safe framework, if you see what I mean. And you know, when that's finished, when the storyline is done, kind of you release those anxieties. And then I usually watch like a video of dog and cat fails on YouTube, and I'm good again. So,
How did you work in that mental health representation into the Namaste Slasher? Because I know we said that this is like a mindfulness retreat, and your characters are kind of trying to
mm,
heal from trauma. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the journey that they go on in your slasher novel?
die. No, to put it bluntly. Uh, I wanted to have yeah, main characters from all over Europe who come together, who've all gone through trauma, and they were selected specifically because they've been through different types of trauma. One losing a mother, one having gone through cancer treatment, for example, and all of them try to find themselves and find grounding by either doing like sound healing sessions or meditating, group meditating, all these different type of things, or yoga. Um, then I don't want to give away too much because there's massive twists and turns in there, but they get to this point where you go like, oh, they're really like healing their, they're finding some kind of closure within themselves, and then bang, the unaliver steps in. So, and I wanted to have that too, to have a little bit more depth to the genre, because slasher is fun and it's campy and it's very fast paced. It's not the longest book, it's like 230 pages, but I wanted to have solid backstories in there so you feel for the characters and you don't just go, oh, it's fodder for an or for a kill, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna go back and like it's really cool writing is pretty cathartic, and that's what you said about having a place where you can, pretty much dump your stuff without, being, again, oh, that's PTSD. Um, because
Hmm.
I do the same thing in my books, and it's just, I mean, whatever you do with writing, whether we publish it or not, even like journaling is cathartic, and
Hmm.
writing is very healing. So I was, I felt that in my soul. Um,
That's nice to hear. I wanted to ask both of you actually, because both being well different like fantasy authors, do you feel like that if you don't mind me asking, that community, does it also feel like quite a supportive and welcoming to weirdos and in a positive way? Do you feel that too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My
yes.
book Fate's Tether, it actually deals a lot with PTSD, domestic violence, anxiety, depression, all those types of things, and I feel like a lot of my readers have been incredibly open and accepting of it. If they don't relate to it themselves, they still find value in it, and they still learn from difficult emotions and the way that we process them. I feel
Hmm.
like in general the fantasy community is very highly accepting of being weird and doing kind of whatever you want. I think that's the beauty of writing these maybe less mainstream type of books. Like we're not
Hmm.
necessarily doing contemporary romance, which I also love. I love that genre as well. I just think because it's this fantasy world, this world that we've made up with, our own rules of how things happen. Like for you,
Hmm.
you've got a killer who comes out, you know what I mean? And he's pursuing them, and that adds so much tension and hype and, nervousness to the plot. And that allows you to explore, mental health in a different way than you would in fantasy. But I do think because fantasy is like, oh, we have to build the world ourselves, there's definitely so much room for your weirdness and for whatever you come up with in your head.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my book's all about a matriarchy, and it really flips gender roles completely all the way around.
Love that.
So, and yeah, thanks. um, so, and a lot of readers have gotten like the gist of the, I guess, lesson to be learned or whatever that is. That no system where somebody it has an advantage, like a group has an advantage over another group, is ever going to
Hmm.
function well for any of us. There's never going to be really equality. Um, and it's really cool to see all of my readers get that, and then on top of it be like, because they're like, I never thought I'd fight for men's rights before, and why these women are being so mean to them. So it's really cool, and but it also deals with a lot of grief, and I did lose my mother when I was 6 years old to breast cancer. So it
Hmm.
is like there's stuff that I put in there that not necessarily that I felt, though you do have to kind of like when you have your characters express their feelings, you do have to like go back and think about those, things
Hmm.
that you did
Hmm.
feel and be able to put it into words. But there are things as well that people in my life who lost her also have told me and felt, and then puts it, put it in the book because it makes it more realistic. But it doesn't necessarily say like so and so, says this about losing the person that they loved. um, it's just kind of we seed it in, and
Yeah, yeah,
oops,
yeah.
my earbud came out, and we
Mhm.
hurt our readers in such a way by seeding it
Yeah,
in, but also making ourselves feel better.
that's a catharsis in a way too, isn't it? We've all
Yes,
gone
yes,
through apparently.
yes. So that's why your whole thing, like I was like, oh, that's so true. What made you choose the elements in the book that you did? For example, why did you choose the Buddha mask along with a mindfulness retreat?
I guess kind of linking back to what I was saying before that if you think of the Buddha statue, the Buddha mask, or Siddhartha in general, I'm spiritual as well, so it's closely connected to me, and people see it as wholesomeness or safety. It's so I think that was one of the main things. Like even on the cover, I don't know, like you have I don't know if you can see it properly, but it's the Buddha mask. But then kind of because of the lighting, it became, it become turns into this fairy figure, so to speak. But what I liked about writing the killer, and I can't say too much, but there's spirituality in the killer too. So it's not just some kind of a just hacking for the sake of it or just killing people for the sake of it. There's spirituality um, and Buddhism connected to the killer too. So that was nice again of putting those two elements together that you just wouldn't, I guess, wouldn't expect. I haven't really seen it in that genre. maybe, but yeah, I hope not too
Yeah.
much.
Well, actually, my mom is Buddhist, so I'm Korean, and
Ah.
I've got so many Buddhas just like in my room currently. And so when I saw that, I was really interested because you're right, it's just not represented. And of course, we don't want it done just for the sake of having a Buddha mask where it doesn't like tie into
Mhm.
the plot or anything like that. What I really liked about your book is it does feel like an intentional choice. It's not just to take from, you know, spirituality and just throw it in there just because
Mhm.
you're writing a novel. For me, I could really see the way that it was already being reflected in the deeper underlying things with, you know, representing mental health and your own
Mhm.
experiences with PTSD being put into the book and all these different things. I just think you're right that we don't really see that we don't see Buddhas being put into slasher novels. But what I think is so
Mhm.
interesting about it is the way that it offers contrast. I think because you're right, we see Buddha as like this very calm. You go to him when you're meditating, when you are praying, when you're doing all of those things. But you're combining it with this, you know, people are going there to seek refuge and to seek healing, and then
Mhm.
what they're experiencing is a very frightful evening, a very frightful time, a lot of different horrors. They don't make it out at the end of the novel, and I think that
Do they?
contrast or do they? I haven't read it. I have to know. I really want to know.
There you go.
It's the contrast between the two. I think adds so much more to your novel. I just really like it. I think it was a really unique and interesting choice that you've made.
Thank you. I even wanted that in the title too, because it sounds very blunt, like Namaste Slasher, but I just thought Slasher is scary. Namaste has a very healing, warm vibe to it. So just by putting that in the title, it already kind of has a first layer representation of what it's about, and also that I don't take myself too seriously because there's still the campiness to it, and just the title itself, I think, makes people go like, ah, it's fun, but there's something to it. Hopefully, that's the idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, what was your favorite scene or dialogue to write?
There's these moments where they have the circle of truth after doing group meditations, and they all go through their backstories, and that was really nice to go dig a little bit deeper, like I said before, and a lot of it with slasher writing is action-based and descriptive writing and talking about senses, but really digging a bit deeper and also adding different European cultural elements that I love doing in any of my books, being Belgian myself. So some of them were talking about the War of Independence in Croatia or the Balkan Wars through Bosnia in the 90s, for example. One is like French Curaçao, so there's the biracial element, and just talking about their backstories was. I just imagined myself sitting around this campfire and getting to know people that I've never met, but you want to get close to because you want to confide in them, and that felt really nice to write and kind of soothing in a way, even though I know you're about to get butchered, but at the time it felt very like nice to do. And then my favorite thing to write usually are the chase scenes rather than the actual moment of killing. I write through first person POV, present tense, so that's also allows me to take the characters all the way up to the end when they do get killed. So you're with them when they die, and it's not like, oh, she gets stabbed, but you're really like talking about how the character feels and the senses and stuff. And it's really nice to work on pacing, because you don't have the element of jump scares or music like you do in film slashers. So it's very difficult to get the right pacing done. But then when it does work in the end, and hopefully it does, there's a really nice feeling when you go, oh, this is so tense, I love it, you know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't even consider that. You don't have lighting, you don't have music to
Hmm.
build this scene for you. You have to do it, you know, with your legwork. And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that you do it with first person present tense. I think that really adds to the urgency that your characters are probably feeling in those moments.
Yeah,
All right.
that's something I did a lot of a lot of research, quite a bit of research. I think I read like 20 slasher novels before, and none of them were first person POV. So that means a lot of the killing was done off screen, so to speak, or like off page. And sometimes I thought, oh, I really wish I saw or read those last moments. I thought, well, maybe if I write from first person perspective, people will really know how they feel and that they're still running even though they've been stabbed or they're still trying to hide somewhere. And that made it, yeah, way more intense for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. What was the most
Excuse me.
difficult scene or dialogue for you to write?
One my favorite character may or may not go through something. lethal. It's difficult to say, but I always have a couple of favorites. And this one I had like two or three out of the six that I was really connected to because I saw some of my friends and my family in there. But I always want to have this moment where you really root for someone and they don't make it, because those are the scenes that people usually think about most. Because when all of them end up living to the end, then there's no stakes. And, with slashers, you do need high stakes. Nobody should feel safe. Otherwise, it feels a bit, as much as I love it, more like goosebumpy.
Hmm.
More like YA. So I think it's important to have all of them are main characters. It's not like we have a main character and then secondary characters. All five of them on the cover are the main ones. So you really don't know who the final girl or boy or person will be. So yeah, I guess killing one of them off, I was like, oh, I really like you, but you gotta go for the storyline.
That's
this is for
just
the
the
betterment of
author's
the story.
struggle.
That
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I made it a very long chase scene, so that was fun to write. I was like, you're gonna have your moment.
That's awesome. And I love the you know, again, the chase scene and being able to see them. It's kind of like writing what you want to read, which is the
Hmm.
kind of advice a lot of authors give, and it's cool that you were like, "Man, I wish I could, you know, see
Hmm.
them die and be with them and experience that in a way because that is intense. That's an intense moment." So, that would be really cool to read in a horror book like that.
Give
Um,
it a go. Haha.
yeah, oh, true. I should. Out of all those characters that are on your book cover, or maybe perhaps
Hmm.
somebody who isn't, which character gave you the most trouble as an author?
Trouble, as in like I didn't feel natural to write about them, you mean, or in what way trouble? To make sure.
Ooh. Yeah, like, well, for instance, I have a character in my book that, my God, no one liked him in the beginning, and he went through so many edits, and, it was just hard to get him as a character. But I guess, like,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's difficult to write, somebody who just kind of does their own thing outside your plans, or,
Yeah,
whoever, who was a pain in the neck.
there was the one female protagonist that is a bit of a tough cookie, and I kind of wanted her to be a bit kinder and a bit warmer, but at the same time, I was like, no, this woman has gone through like Balkan Wars, so she grew up with intergenerational trauma, so she's not just gonna be like, is everybody okay? She's gonna be like a soldier in those moments. Um, And actually, most people said that they really enjoyed the character. I didn't like her as much because I thought I don't think I'll be besties with you, but you have a lot of depth to you and a lot of hopefully a lot of layers. But she was a bit tricky sometimes to write. Yeah, but I like to write characters that are very likable but still flawed. Like I was saying before with slashers, a lot of the times you have fodder. You would have the gay character, you have the BIPOC character in the past that was very one-dimensional. The Joker who ended up being fat shamed or whatever, back in the 80s, 90s when it was just, okay, we have these characters, haha, now do we kill them off? I didn't want that with a slasher. I wanted people to really go, oh, these people, we're rooting for all of them. And then they don't make it, which makes it more impactful, hopefully.
For sure. Yeah, because then I mean, with any story, you care about them, and then it's like, oh God, there they go. So
Yeah,
you break their
exactly.
little hearts. Um, well, you are a Belgian author. How
Mhm.
do you think being from Europe has influenced the way you wrote the novel, such as through culture and language? We probably already touched on that a smidgen, but you can elaborate on it.
Mhm. There's chocolate and waffles in all my scenes. No, just kidding. Thinking what is well, it's not my first language, first of all, so it doesn't make it easy to write in. English was the fourth language at school that I learned. Now it's become the second that I use. But so it's not a native language, of course. So I need an editor, I need a proofreader to make sure that things make sense and flow well. But at the same time, I'm a teacher at a European school in Brussels, which is very, very international. You have like 16, 17 nationalities per class. And I've learned a lot through my students about differences in European cultures. Because I think a lot of the time, maybe if you're correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe if you're American, you think of Europe, or maybe the same happens. You would know then with like Asia that people just see the continent as one nationality or one identity when there's so many, you know, different little things. And like there's even a scene when one girl meets the rest and gives three kisses like they do in France, and the rest is kind of taken aback because in Belgium you give one kiss and it's only what you do to someone who's higher up in scale than you are. And so those little things I like including in the novel. So that like a lot of American readers have said, I've learned so much about like European culture, like these little things on, yeah, do we hug, do we kiss, like little things like that that otherwise, I guess maybe is not represented a lot in literature, and definitely in that genre because it's a very American genre. So that I guess the main thing, and but I wanted to write it in English. First of all, you get a hopefully a larger audience over different countries. Like Dutch or Flemish is spoken in tiny, tiny countries, so I wouldn't have a big audience to start with. It's a challenge not to write in your own language, but I'm also, yeah, I guess I can say that I'm proud of doing it too at the same time. It's a nice challenge for myself and learning that way too, and learning from little mistakes when you go through the editors, things that I go, ooh, that felt very Flemish. She was right. That structure was a bit, a bit Dutch. Or, but I do purposefully include some of them. Like sometimes the editor was like, this felt a bit Dutch. I was like, yeah, but I want that because my protagonist is also not a native speaker, so there should be some sentences in there that feel like what we call European English. A lot of us speak English to each other, but it's not our first language. For example, like one of my roommates is from Switzerland, so we speak English together. Even though he's German speaking and I'm French and Dutch speaking, whatever. So I wanted there to be things that felt like maybe tiny mistakes, but it's just how we talk. So
Yeah. I think we can definitely
yeah.
relate to that because the US is huge. It's so big
Hmm.
that often people will think everyone in the US is exactly the same, whereas you go to the South and they are completely different than someone that you would find in the
Hmm.
Midwest or someone that you would find on the West Coast and things like that. So it is really interesting that you have these little nuances that you include. These little, oh, it was written in, it's not my first language, but you're still trying to make it, I think, in some ways true to you and in some ways true to your characters, because like you said, some of those
Hmm.
characters are not native English speakers either. And so that's really cool to see that representation. I think that was a wise decision to leave some of those little phrases the
Hmm.
way that they were, because that's really unique. We have a lot of stories written by authors in the US in English. And so I think we could
Hmm.
definitely stand to see a little bit of European English or a little bit of something different. I think
A
that,
bit
that
of
that's really
flavor.
cool. Yeah, something a
Exactly.
little different. I mean, if you're from Europe, we want to see, those parts of you that are shining because of where you're from. I think that's very interesting. I love that you've put it into your book and made sure to
Mhm.
work, and especially you have that other series too, the Europea Halls.
Yeah.
I think that one probably definitely has a lot of those European influences too.
Yeah, it's about a European boarding school in Brussels. So, and the girls always talk about difference in architecture, music, fashion. There are massive differences between the countries' language, of course. I love getting little expressions in, like for example, in Flemish, if someone's tall, we would say they're as tall as a door. And then I would put that in the book, and then someone who's not Dutch would go like, "The hell are you on about?" It's like, it just means that you're tall. It's a Dutch thing. So it's fun to get those things in there.
Yeah, yeah. So do you listen to music when you write, or do you have like a routine that you follow every time you sit down to write?
Usually I have I don't know if you can see, I got my assistant behind me, if I can show you. Ooh, she's sleeping at the moment. Yeah, that's a dog that I adopted in Romania, my stray
Oh.
dog. So she's my assistant. She really kind of calms me down. It's nice. Oh, sorry. Nice to have that with me. Music-wise, no, I can't because I get distracted too easily. Sometimes classical music. But if I can't if there's lyrics, then I'm definitely lost. Too much of like, huh, what did I say? You know?
I relate to that a lot, but I have to listen to
Yeah.
music. I can't just listen in silence. But I have the same thing. If it has lyrics,
Oh.
I'm gonna get thrown off. I'm gonna start writing whatever the song is saying.
Oh yeah, and do you like have a fixed spot both of you to write? Like I'm all over the place when I write. So
Oh, I'm in the same spot every time I sit at my desk and I
yeah.
have to be right
Mm.
here. I think Morgan goes to different places.
I do. It depends. What am I doing? Am I writing or am I editing? If I'm writing, I mean, sometimes I'll write at my desk. But lately I've been wanting to get cozy. It's probably the season or whatever. So I like
Hmm.
to get like comfy on my bed and have a blanket and a candle and things, and that's how I draft. But if I'm editing, I have to, because editing is such a drag. So I have to
Yeah.
like be focused at the desk and have like movie soundtracks or video game soundtracks going on. Um, so there's that. And sometimes I'll go to a coffee shop if I really have to, because there's still distracting things around the apartment. So, and my phone and everything, and I could just scroll
Hmm.
on TikTok or something. So sometimes I'll have to go to a coffee shop just if I really need to get something done and
Hmm.
just buckle down and do it.
Yeah.
Um, so there's all
Fun
that.
that you said that type of music because it's really connected to fantasy, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah,
I guess for fantasy, you have a lot of musicality that goes with the genre when you write. I guess more than
yeah,
horror. So yeah, that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and then with the video game music, it's designed to help you focus because
Hmm.
that's just how video game it's just made for that so you can keep playing the game because that's what the game developers and companies want you to do. So like
Right.
even if I played Mario Kart, like it's gonna ignite something in my brain that hyper focuses on a screen.
That's so cool. I never thought about that, but yeah, that's clever marketing. Ooh, that's cool. Love
Yeah.
learning new geeky facts. Thank you.
Geeky facts.
So, Alan, what are your publishing plans for the future? Do you have any more books you're planning on putting out there for us?
So first of all, the trilogy will get like a box set, nice little
Oh.
3D box thingy. Then at the moment, the Namaste Slasher is only paperback, but hardcover is coming out the 4th of November and has a bonus chapter. That was really fun to do actually, because the ARC team that I have, the advanced reader, the early reviewers, let's say, there's about 60, 70 people I know I can really count on by now by book four. And I've asked all of them to imagine that I wrote a prompt on Reddit about like kind of the lore about the killer and about the spirituality around it and stuff. And all of them had to pretend they were on Reddit and write a reply. So that's like the bonus chapters, and it's really nice to like involve the ARC readers that way too, because they get excited to be like, oh, we're gonna be in the hardcover, and kind of my way of, I guess, paying back because they don't have to do it. They do, you know this too. They do a lot of this out of their own kind-heartedness. So that's something I'm looking forward to putting out there, just to kind of share the love. And there will be a next splasher, but after the recording, I'll tell you something because I can't say anything yet.
Okay. Well, I'm
And
looking forward to
I
hearing
think
it.
you might appreciate it, but I'll tell you after.
Okay, okay.
Ooh.
Um, I think that a box set sounds really, really, really cool, and also that about the fact that you're including your ARC readers into the hardcover. That's so cool. I've never heard of anything like that. I don't know if you've heard of anything like that, Morgan, but to do something to pay homage to your ARC readers is so beautiful. That's so cute, and so like I just
Mhm.
love being indie because we get to do things like that. We get to
Right?
include
Yeah.
people if we want to. We get to reach out and show love our own way. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And
No,
I
it's
agree. And the fact that they write their little entries and there's little mistakes or whatever in there, but it's not about that, right? So like maybe traditional, they would go like, "Oh, but this doesn't feel like it's written properly." Screw that. It's a Reddit post, so you know.
It's supposed to be incorrect sometimes. No,
Hmm.
that's really cool. And it's always important to like, I guess across your entire author career to always include your readers because I mean all readers. Because all of them, you know, pick up your book and may leave a review or that, they just bought your book. So it's something that, I really appreciate from a reader. And every time they gush about anything with my book, I'm like, thank you for reading it. So I've heard of like author newsletters. They'll make like polls. They'll even like be like, I can't think of a name for this character. Here are some names you
Hmm.
guys
Hmm.
pick, or like kind of things, or even like book titles. Like readers get to decide what happens
Hmm.
next. Sometimes I've heard of that. But
Yeah.
that's really cool that you actually put like their content into the your hardcover there.
Yeah, I thought it would be something little nice. I did the same with the when the paperback was released. I asked them if they would prefer matte or gloss. I just put it like on Instagram and then people could vote. And it was really nice to see people's opinions. And what do you think they chose, by the way? Matte or gloss? Readers in
Probably
general.
Matt, it's my favorite.
I was gonna say probably matte. I feel like I made mine
Yeah.
gloss, and once I got it, I was like, I wonder if I should have chose matte. I think
You can
I'd
still
probably change it.
change it, right?
I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
I could, but see, then the problem is, what if I come out with the second book and that one is in matte, and people bought the gloss first one? They're gonna be like, they don't match. So now I'm just gonna go with gloss for this series, and I'm gonna go matte with a different series.
Yeah. It's annoying you can't do, but I guess it's through Amazon mostly, or do you also do Ingram Spark?
I do
Or
Ingram too, yeah.
Ingram Spark. Yeah.
yeah, but you can only choose one, right? That's the tricky part, I think. I mean, either matte or glossy, but you can't just do both in it. Then it would be really nice just to have an extra little click so that whoever wants to buy it, whichever shop or whatever they can choose, let's get a matte or a gloss.
Yeah,
So
that would be
Ingram,
really
if you're
cool.
listening, yeah,
Yeah. Amazon, Ingram, yeah, because the mat, I
yeah,
love the feeling of a mat, but I got my dirty fingerprints all over my hardbacks and my paperbacks, so, and it's just still there. But I love matte so much better. It doesn't reflect and stuff and
Mhm.
pictures and things. So,
Yeah, definitely
um,
for hardcover, I was really pleasantly shocked at how good the level is from Amazon. I haven't done Ingram Spark hardcover yet, but the hardcover ones that I have, really high quality. I was like, oof, way better than the paperback. So,
nice. It's always fun to
mm,
see the differences.
yeah.
Alan, what made you choose indie publishing before you got with all these books?
The liberty, I guess what we've touched upon before, all of us, that you can put things in there that you can't traditionally do. I think if I'm very honest with myself, PTSD also leads to perfectionism a lot of the times, where you want to have control, and there's a lot of things that you don't have control over in life. But then when it comes to your own creativity, it's nice that you feel safety within that, I would say. Um, First of all, if I'm very honest, I think it was also like, oh, nobody's gonna want to publish me, so I'll do it myself. That was one of the things for the first book. Then I've been contacted by a couple of different publishing companies by now, like nice ones for horror and things that I was kind of shocked by, but I was still like, I like doing it myself. I'll do it myself. Maybe in the future at some point, but you get to meet all these lovely people like the two of you, and I think a lot of us, we're just a little bit, I don't know, creative, quirky, and I love quirky and anything that's not standard in life. So that's why. Yeah.
For sure. In traditional publishing, I mean, if you want standard, that's where it's at. But I
Mm,
agree with all of that as well. Indie publishing, you have that control and you get to just do what you want and um, publish what you want.
hmm
But it's really cool that, I mean, it's kind of kind of gasses you up that the companies reach out to you and go like, "Hey, maybe we can print your book," and you can still
Yeah.
say, "No, you're not good enough for me." It's like,
Let me flip my wheel. No.
yeah. So
Yeah, I did it in a respectful way, of course, but there were little moments where I went like, "Why? I'm new and they're actually interested." So yeah, it's a nice feeling.
yeah, I'd probably freak out too. Oh my gosh. Well, with knowing all that, what does indie publishing mean to you?
Mhm. Coziness is the first word that comes to mind. Like all the people I've met, often ever felt like stiff or calculated. You know what I mean? The writing process, the people that read it, because you do see people going, "Oh, I don't like reading indie because it's going to be full of mistakes." But then the people that invest in indie readers are usually also very like open-minded, warm, um, non-judgmental people. So I guess that's it kind of feels like a comfy blanket, indie. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I feel like the indie community is so accepting and welcoming. And I feel like when you find your readers inside this indie space, like you said, they're okay with a couple mistakes, but they also are really interested in more unique stories. They're interested in things that aren't
Hmm.
necessarily being published by traditional publishers. And I think that's a really great part of indie publishing is like you get to write a story that interests you, and somehow you will find other people who are also interested in the same thing, even if it feels like you won't. You're like, wait, you want to read this and you like the way it sounds? Wow.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I also thought, oh, mine is so niche, like queer 90s slasher pu- in Brussels. Everyone's gonna be like, the fuck? Oh, sorry, can I swear? You can
Yes,
edit
you
it out.
can.
They'll be like, okay, where the toot? Would I read this? So it was the same as you, and I'd never thought I would have even something like an audience. So it feels really nice to have, I guess, faithful readers. You can call it by that by book four, I suppose. So
Yeah. What are your biggest obstacles when it comes to actually publishing your books? So after they were written, what did you encounter that slowed you down as far as publishing?
I was trying to be honest with the answers. I guess the promo stuff was rocky in the beginning, to put it mildly. I had to really learn about Facebook ads, Amazon ads. Amazon ads I still suck at. Facebook ads I've become good at. I know how it works now. I finally get like, 2, 3 times what I put in and is coming back, but it took me so many failed ads the first half a year to get there. Um, I think after a while it feels cringy sometimes to continuously talk on socials about your book and kind of kind of like whoring yourself out if you say it in a bad way. Like, please read it. Here's my baby. And you think, how many other ways can I try to convince people? They must be so sick of me by now. So I think the entire promo thing, um, you need it as an indie. What we know it. We everything is our own budget if you think about it, right? So all the little cents and the euros and the dollars in your case, they matter. So I think advertising is something that slows me down because I want to do it right and not lose too much money over it. And that's finally starting to work. Phew. Yeah.
Well, do you have any tips for people on Facebook ads, that since you've said that you've kind of figured that out a little bit more?
Not more than four parameters. Like the hashtags, are they hashtags or what are they called again? When you can fill in like extra interests and stuff.
Oh, okay. You got to keep it
Maximum
simple.
4 or 5. Yeah, and then always specify, I guess you know these things too. Specify one country. Don't have an ad that runs in 3, 4 countries. It's too wide. So I have an ad running in the UK. I've got one in Germany, got one in a part of the US, another part of the US, because it's too big to have it just in massive US. That helps. I link mine to film, not to books actually. So my hashtags would be like Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Halloween, Urban Legends. Uh, because I know that not a lot of slasher viewers would think of, oh, there's also books. That's how it started for me. I was never a slasher reader in the past, more like a slasher viewer. So I thought, oh, that could be nice. Oh, and a nice one that I found out just purely by chance, by for being dumb with app, is that I uploaded a picture, but it was cut off a little bit. Just a tiny bit of the cover was cut off, and way more people click on it because they get curious. So now, whenever I make an ad, I make sure you don't see the full title because it's kind of like an annoying thing, but people are gonna be like, "What the heck is this?" And then they click, and then yeah, I notice more. There's more. The click-through rate is like 0.003 or something now, and it used to be 1.20, 0.20 or whatever. So that's a good tip, maybe. Cut off your pictures and annoy people.
I also think when you mentioned that you kind of search more for film viewers, I think that that is actually a good piece of advice for people, is to tailor your marketing to where you think you might find potential readers, and not necessarily like um, you know directly trying to advertise to people who read thrillers, but maybe to people who don't necessarily
Hmm.
read thrillers but might want to read yours, because they're like, oh, this sounds really interesting and I saw the ad for it. So I think that that's a wise decision, is to try to branch out
Hmm.
a little bit and not necessarily go super super niche, but like maybe people who like the films might also like the books, and you can kind of talk them
Yeah,
into reading something about it. Yeah, that's really cool.
I guess
um
same goes for fantasy probably too. I'm guessing that if there's people who love fantasy films, maybe then they would go like, oh, hold on. And I forgot now. Sorry. Have a brain fart at the moment. There was something I wanted to give another tip to help. You could edit that out. Can you give me a second? There was
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Hold on, what was it? Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of other people, and I did it in the beginning too, that had like really long text with their Facebook ads and like all these visuals. For me, it helps that I have a comp. So for example, I have Scream meets Dark Academia, and then
Mhm.
the book cover, and that's it. Like in the beginning, I was making all these beautiful Canva things and this and that, thinking, oh, this looks lush, but it wasn't working. And I just found, because people get so overstimulated with scrolling and doom scrolling, and that it helps to keep it simple. So
Oh,
That's
maybe I
that
can,
true.
that is a
yeah,
really good tip. Well, what's your best piece of advice just in general for self-publishing that you wish you knew ahead of time?
be kind to yourself, I would say, is a big one. Because I think it's, if you're kind of doing everything, you're putting on all these different tasks and roles, not just a writer, you're all of a sudden you're a PR manager and whatnot. Um, be kind and give yourself time to learn and don't make it perfect. And there will be mistakes in the debut. There will be mistakes in any book, I think, and that's kind of okay. If you're authentic to yourself, if you write what you want to read, like you were saying before, that was definitely the case for me too. Just show a bit of kindness. Also, maybe don't overdo it with deadlines, because I was definitely too tight with that with the trilogy. Because I noticed people were like, they liked the first one, so I was like, and I gave myself 3 months to write an entire book, and I did it, but I don't know how I did it. I don't think I'll be able to do that again. So I guess allow yourself 2, 3 months extra for your deadline, and you can always publish it earlier than you said, and people will be happy. But the opposite is, I guess, trickier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Is giving yourself time. I know that my book published at the end of August, and I
Hmm.
originally was hoping to plan to publish in the beginning of June, but I was cautious, and so I said, well, we'll just put it at August, maybe September if things really don't go right. And I'm so glad that I gave myself that extra time because it did come out in August. It did not come out in June. So clearly things did not, stay on track, but I totally agree. Giving yourself a couple extra months is the way to do it. And like you said, people will be happy if you release it early. They'll be like, oh, exciting. So it doesn't
Surprise.
hurt to give yourself the time. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
For sure.
I agree.
Yeah, I feel
Hmm.
like there's an I no, I read I think it's right here. The launching How to Launch a Successful Book Series by Helen Schuer. Um and it
Oh,
is yeah,
yeah,
well,
mirrored, right?
you can
It's
kind
pretty
of
weird.
see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's a fantasy author too, and she does talk about how she will plan a few months out, like her release a few months out, and she does surprise her readers with like, actually, it's coming out, much earlier than you anticipated. So, and then they get super excited. So it like really helps, anyways,
Hmm.
to plan ahead, and it's still
Oh,
leaving room for errors because they do happen. Um, Alan, what
cool.
is
Yeah.
one thing you wish that came easier to you when it comes to writing, editing, marketing, whatever?
Visibility, I guess. I'm from a tiny, tiny country, so it doesn't make it easy to reach across the pond. To be honest, I was very grateful that because of the ads, I did get to #1 horror, like in the US and in the UK and stuff. So something worked with the ads magically. A bit of luck, a bit of, you know, word of mouth, I guess, is necessary too. Something that could have been easier. I guess, yeah, language-wise, I have to be honest, sometimes language barriers do exist. And so that what is in there at the end of the day, I think is hopefully pretty good. But I have had like a couple of reviews where like the spelling was atrocious, and I was like, no, but it's spelled in British English. And I guess sometimes Americans don't, you know, make the connection of there are different spellings too, that are possible too. Um,
Um, so Alan, are there any future goals or upcoming events or releases that you wanted to mention? We did talk about like your new special edition hardcover a bit.
mhm.
So anything else you got going on?
Couple of things actually, yeah. I'm doing a couple of conventions, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to Canterbury in the UK, 29th of March. That's an indie horror author convention with 40 something authors that I've gotten quite close to, which is nice. Then 12th and 13th of April, I'll be at BIF, which is Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival. It's the biggest fantasy and horror festival in Europe. So the two of you would love it, and you should visit me. So for me, that was like a really big one because everyone in Brussels and Belgium has kind of ignored me so far. I don't mean that in a pity way, but it's just because I don't write in Flemish or French. Attention isn't really there. So the fact that this massive film festival asked me to have a stand was like really like, woo, this, was very, very exciting. And it's literally 10 minutes metro and I'm there from my home. So that's it for the festival. And then I've also been invited to go to Indiana, it was close to Chicago. Books and Brews 2, it's called. It's the biggest indie horror author convention in the States. And there's 56 indie horror authors going to that. So that's the first time I'll be going to the States for a convention. So that's super, super exciting. I'm gonna have to save up a little bit for a couple of months because it's pricey to
Yes.
fly 8.5 hours in the hotels and everything. But I'm really, really grateful that I was selected out of a bunch of great, great, great people. A lot of them have way more experience than me, so it's a bit humbling and a bit terrifying, but I'll take it on. And then, yeah, I'm talking to people, and this can take a very long time and whatnot, but the goal would be for film adaptation too. Things are moving, but I can't say more because I don't want to jinx myself.
That's really exciting. Yeah, we don't want to jinx it,
Yeah.
but it all sounds really
Mm.
amazing, and I think it's cool that you're going to all these different events, especially one in the U.S. Too bad it's not close to
Mhm,
us. We're
mhm.
still so far. But Alan has another series called Europia Halls, and here is a little brief introduction to that. Welcome to Europia Halls. Only the select few have made it into these prestigious dorms in the capital of the EU, Brussels. When six best teenage friends get stalked by a serial killer, the campus is on high alert. As the body count piles up, it seems the killer knows a thing or two about slasher movies. Can these girls fight back in time to discover the truth behind the gruesome murders, or will no one live to tell the tale? And Alan, that sounds incredible. So why don't you go ahead and give us those social media handles, because I know people are going to want to look you and these books up.
Hopefully. Yeah, right. So I'm on both Instagram and TikTok under Alan Shivers author, just in one word. Alan Shivers with one L. I'm also just on Facebook as Alan Shivers author, and yes, that would be it. That would be the easiest way to get in touch. Feel free to DM me. I'm staying on Goodreads. I kind of kept it clear on different different social media platforms.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much to Alan Shivers for being here with us for an amazing interview. Next week, you'll be able to catch Kara Blaine, author of the Lux's Lullaby trilogy, here on the Indie Book Nerds podcast. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks so
you,
much for having
Alan.
me.